Hi guys! Tonight we step quietly into Victorian London before the sun has properly decided to rise. You wake not with an alarm, but with the sound of wheels grinding over stone, a distant shout, a cough behind a wall so thin it may as well be paper. The air already tastes used, damp, heavy. It presses against your throat, as if the city itself has leaned close to breathe you in. Somewhere nearby, a church bell clears its throat and strikes the hour not gently, but with authority. You probably will not survive this if comfort is what you expect. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Now dim the lights. You are lying in a narrow bed, your body curled slightly because the frame does not allow much choice. The mattress is thin and uneven, stuffed with something that once passed for straw. It rustles when you shift. The room smells faintly of last night's candle smoke, damp wool, and something sour that no amount of scrubbing ever quite removes. Outside fog presses against the window, like a living thing, pale and thick, blurring the boundary between indoors and out. This fog is not the romantic mist of paintings and postcards. It is smoke married to moisture. Coal soot suspended in the air, a byproduct of thousands of fires burning through the night. One widely accepted fact is that Victorian London relied heavily on coal for heating and industry, and that dependence shaped not only the economy, but the very air people breathed each morning. You feel it now, coating your tongue, settling in your lungs before the day has even begun. You sit up slowly. The floor is cold. Your feet find it anyway. There is no pause button on the morning. Somewhere in the building, someone else is already moving. A door opens. A chamber pot sloshes. A baby cries, then quiets, then cries again. The walls transmit everything. Privacy is not a concept that has fully arrived here. You wash your face with water poured from a jug into a shallow basin. The water is icy. It shocks you awake in a way no coffee ever could. As it drips back into the bowl, you catch your reflection in the dim light. Your face looks older than it should. Everyone here does. Time leaves marks quickly in this city. Outside, the street is waking too. You hear hoofbeats slow and steady. A cart rattles past iron rims striking stone with a sound that seems far too loud for this hour. Somewhere nearby, a vendor is already calling out his voice, muffled by fog, advertising bread that may or may not be fresh. You cannot see him, but you know the routine well enough to picture him exactly. There is a curious detail that often surprises modern listeners. Many Victorians believed early morning fog had health benefits, especially for the skin. Some even lingered in it deliberately, convinced it tightened pores or cleared the head. It is a strange comfort clinging to small beliefs when the environment offers so little kindness. As you pull on your clothes layer by layer, you become aware of how heavy they feel. Wool is warm, yes, but it is also unforgiving. It scratches, it holds moisture. Once it is damp, it stays that way. Buttons are stiff with wear. Fabric has been patched so many times that the original shape is only a suggestion. Clothing here is not about expression. It is about endurance. The city outside continues its low murmur. London at this hour does not roar, it exhales. Steam rises from graters, horses snort. Somewhere metal strikes metal as a shopkeeper lifts a shutter. This is a city, already at work even as the sky remains stubbornly grey. There is ongoing academic discussion about whether Victorians perceived their environment as harsh in the way we do today, or whether constant exposure dulled their awareness of discomfort. Some researchers suggest that what feels unbearable to us may have registered as normal background noise to them, an accepted price of urban life. You step closer to the window and peer out. The street below is narrow. Buildings lean toward each other like conspirators. Laundry hangs between upper floors, stiff with yesterday's cold. A woman hurries past, shawl pulled tight, head down. A boy not much older than 10 follows behind her, carrying something far too heavy for his size. No one stops, no one stares, This is simply morning. The fog shifts, thins for a moment, then thickens again. It curls around gas lamps that have not yet been extinguished, turning their light into hazy halos. The lamps hiss softly, a sound that blends into the city's breathing. Gas lighting is still a relatively recent innovation here, and its presence is reshaping how people move through darkness. Streets feel marginally safer, though fear has not been banished. It has simply learned to stand in the shadows. Your stomach reminds you that it is empty. Breakfast will be simple, if it comes at all. Bread, perhaps. Tea, if you're fortunate. Sugar, if the week has been kind. Meals are less about pleasure and more about fuel, something to keep the body moving through long hours ahead. As you turn from the window, you notice the quiet determination settling in. This is not heroism, it is habit. You will go out. You will do what needs doing. Everyone else will too. The city depends on this unspoken agreement, renewed every morning without ceremony. Downstairs, a door opens and closes again. Footsteps descend. Someone coughs hard, a deep sound that lingers. Coal smoke does that. So does dust. So does time. You take one last breath inside the room before stepping toward the day. The fog waits. The street waits. London, vast and indifferent, is already moving around you, and you move with it because there is no other option. You step out into the building's narrow corridor, and immediately the air changes. It is cooler here, tinged with the smell of boiled cabbage from a room nearby, and damp stone that never fully dries. The hallway is long and dim, lit by a single small window at the far end. As you move, your footsteps echo, and you realize how carefully people here learn to walk, placing each step softly, out of courtesy or exhaustion, or perhaps both. The door to the stairwell creaks as you open it. Someone above you is already descending, their boots heavy, unhurried. There is no rushing in these spaces. The stairs are steep and uneven, worn down by thousands of feet. You grip the railing, polished smooth by generations of hands. It is cool and slightly sticky, a detail you try not to think about for too long. Living like this means sharing everything. Sound, smell, heat, cold. One commonly acknowledged reality is that working-class Victorian housing was often built quickly and cheaply to accommodate the city's explosive growth. As a result, entire families might live in a single room, with walls so thin that conversations became communal, whether anyone intended that or not. You pass a door that is slightly ajar. Inside, a woman bends over a small table, tying a child's shoes with practiced speed. The child yawns, rubbing their eyes. Another child sits on the bed behind them, already dressed, already waiting. The room is barely larger than the one you left. There is no sense of embarrassment at being seen. Privacy is a luxury reserved for those with money and space. Down on the ground floor, the shared entrance smells strongly of yesterday's rain and this morning's refuse. A broom leans against the wall, its bristles worn and splayed. Someone swept here recently, but the effort feels symbolic more than effective. Dirt returns quickly. It always does. Outside, the street greets you with movement. People emerge from doorways in small bursts like breaths from the buildings themselves. Some nod to one another. Others pass without acknowledgement. You notice how close everything feels. Buildings crowd the street, leaning inward. Windows stare down from above. Laundry lines sag overhead, heavy with damp cloth. Noise begins to layer itself carefully. A milk cart rattles past. A dog barks once, then stops. Somewhere a woman laughs briefly, the sound sharp and surprising in the early hour. The city is not fully awake, but it is no longer asleep either. There is an odd and often overlooked detail about Victorian domestic life. Many families shared not only rooms, but beds. It was common for siblings, cousins, even lodgers to sleep together for warmth and space. To modern ears, this sounds unbearable. Yet at the time, it was practical, even comforting. Warmth mattered. Bodies provided it. You feel this now, as you recall the narrow bed you left behind. The memory of shared warmth lingers in your muscles. Cold here is persistent, seeping through stone and bone alike. Fires help, but fuel costs money, and money is always being weighed against other needs. As you walk, you catch snippets of conversation drifting from open windows, complaints about work, questions about food, worries about rent. The words overlap, forming a low murmur that follows you down the street. Everyone seems to be negotiating with something invisible, calculating how much energy they can afford to spend today. Scholars continue to debate how much overcrowding directly contributed to disease versus how much it simply made existing illnesses spread faster. What is clear is that close quarters turned minor sicknesses into shared experiences passed along as easily as gossip. You pass a narrow alley where water pools in shallow depressions. The stones are slick. You step carefully. The smell here is stronger, a mixture of rot and something chemical that stings the nose. This alley is used for everything. Waste, deliveries, shortcuts. It belongs to no one and everyone at once. A man brushes past you carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. He smells of sweat and smoke. He does not apologize, neither do you. Apologies slow things down, and speed matters in small ways here. There is an unspoken understanding that bodies will bump shoulders, will touch lives, will overlap. Above you a window opens and someone empties a basin. You hear the splash before you see the water spread across the stones. You're glad you stepped forward when you did. This practice is officially discouraged, but enforcement is uneven and habits die slowly. There is a strange comfort in knowing what to expect. The predictability of these shared spaces offers a kind of stability. You know when noise will peak. You know when silence will return. You know that no matter how small your room is, you are not alone in it. You reach the corner, where the street widens slightly. Here light filters through the fog a little more easily. A baker's shop is opening. The smell of bread briefly overpowers everything else. It makes your stomach tighten with longing. Food is never just food. It is relief, reward, reassurance. You pause for a moment, leaning against a wall that radiates yesterday's heat. You feel the city pressing in on all sides, not aggressively, but persistently. London does not give you space. It asks you to adapt. As you straighten and prepare to move on, you become aware of how skilled you have become at navigating this closeness. How instinctively you read footsteps, voices, silences. How you have learned to carve out a small internal quiet, even as the world presses close. You step forward again, carried by the slow current of people, beginning their day, each of you bound together by walls that do not quite divide, and lives that constantly touch. You turn down a street that slopes gently, and with it comes a faint sound you recognize instantly. Water. Not flowing freely, not singing, but sloshing. The sound of effort. Someone ahead of you is carrying a bucket, careful not to spill too much before reaching home. You slow slightly, matching their pace without thinking. In this city, water is never taken for granted. The pump stands at the corner, dark iron against pale stone. It has already attracted a small queue. Women mostly, though a few children wait as well, shifting from foot to foot, hands red from cold. You join the line without ceremony. Everyone knows the rules. No cutting, no lingering. You wait because waiting is part of the cost. One widely accepted reality of Victorian London is that access to clean water was uneven at best. Some neighbourhoods had piped supplies by mid-century, while others relied on communal pumps fed by shallow wells. The difference between those two systems could mean health or illness, routine or catastrophe. You can feel the weight of that knowledge, even if no one says it aloud. As the pump handle moves up and down, it lets out a tired groan. The water that emerges is clear enough, though clarity is not the same as safety. You watch it splash into a bucket, catching the grey morning light. There is no smell. That is considered a good sign. Smell is often the first warning here. A woman ahead of you tests the water with her finger, then nods to herself. She pulls her shawl tighter and steps away, muscles already tensing for the walk back. Water is heavy, heavier than it looks. Every household calculation includes whether you can carry enough without spilling, without falling, without attracting attention. There is a lesser-known habit that seems almost unbelievable now. Some Londoners preferred water drawn before sunrise, convinced it was purer before the day's dirt settled into it. The belief persisted even after scientific explanations began to circulate. Old habits cling tightly, especially when they offer a sense of control. When it is your turn, you grip the handle. It is cold, biting even through your sleeve. You pump steadily, listening to the rhythm, watching the bucket fill. You stop just short of the brim. Spilling is wasteful, and waste is frowned upon. You lift the bucket, carefully adjusting your grip until the weight feels balanced. As you step away, you notice how many paths lead back from this corner. Every direction carries someone with water moving slowly, shoulders slightly hunched. It is a quiet procession, repeated day after day. Water determines the pace of the morning. It shapes when meals are cooked, when clothes are washed, when bodies are cleaned. There is ongoing scholarly discussion about how much Victorians understood the link between water and disease before germ theory became widely accepted. Some argue that practical observation led people to avoid certain sources instinctively, even if they could not explain why. Others suggest that tradition and convenience often overruled caution. You carry your bucket along the street, feeling the water sway with each step. Your arms ache almost immediately. This is not exercise, this is maintenance. The city demands it daily. You step around a puddle where yesterday's water still lingers, darkened by soot and traffic. At a doorway, you pause to rest, setting the bucket down carefully. You flex your fingers, feeling the blood return. Above you, a sign creaks gently in the breeze. Somewhere nearby, a child coughs. You think of how many of these sounds tie back to what people drink, wash with, breathe in. Inside the building, the stairs feel steeper with the added weight. You climb slowly, stopping once to catch your breath. No one minds, everyone understands. When you reach your room, you set the bucket down with relief. The water ripples, then stills. You pour a small amount into the basin. It is still cold but familiar now. You wash your hands, rubbing them together until the skin stings. Clean is relative here, but it matters. It always has. The rest of the water will be rationed carefully. A little for tea, a little for cooking, maybe some saved for later. Nothing is wasted without consequence. You glance at the bucket again, aware of how much effort it represents. Outside, the street noise grows slightly louder. More carts, more voices. The city is fully awake now. And thanks to that bucket at your feet, you are prepared to face it, at least for today. You step back into the street and the ground immediately demands your attention. What looked merely damp from above now reveals its true character. Layers of compressed mud cling to the stones. Horse droppings flatten into the surface, dark and shiny at the edges. Bits of straw cabbage leaves and unidentifiable scraps dissolve into a single texture underfoot. The road does not glisten. It absorbs everything it is given. You choose your steps carefully. Too close to the curb invites puddles and runoff. Too far toward the centre risks carts and hooves. Walking here is a constant calculation, learned through small mistakes and damp socks. A wagon rumbles past, close enough that you feel its weight tremble through your shoes. The horse exhales loudly, warm breath briefly clouding the air before fading into the fog. It is widely recognised that 19th century London streets were not maintained by a unified public sanitation system. Cleaning was irregular, often handled by private sweepers, paid by shopkeepers, or by residents themselves when conditions became unbearable. Much of what fell onto the streets simply stayed there, worked deeper into the ground with every passing day. As you move forward, scent becomes your guide. You smell the street before you fully see it. Animal waste announces itself first sharp and unmistakable. Then comes the sweet rot of spoiled produce discarded behind stalls. Smoke weaves through everything, softening edges while making your throat itch. These smells do not shock you anymore. They form a background, like a low hum you stop noticing until it is gone. There is a strange and almost forgotten detail that often surprises people today. Some Londoners believed that dirty streets were healthier than clean ones. The logic was simple. Mud was thought to trap harmful vapours, preventing them from rising into the air. A dry, clean street, they feared, allowed sickness to float freely. It sounds backward now, but it offered reassurance in a world with few certainties. You step around a shallow puddle, its surface trembling as something moves beneath it. Perhaps a rat, perhaps something else. You do not stop to check. The water reflects the grey sky in broken pieces, rippling with each passing footstep. Children dart past you, remarkably skilled at avoiding the worst patches. They have learned these patterns early. Researchers continue to examine how much people understood about sanitation before modern science intervened. Some evidence suggests residents noticed patterns certain streets where illness returned again and again. Others point out that survival often meant ignoring long-term risks in favour of immediate needs. When work calls you, walk where you must. A man with a broom sweeps in front of his shop, pushing debris into a small pile. He pauses to rest, leaning on the handle, surveying his work with limited satisfaction. By afternoon, it will look much the same again. Still he tries. Small acts of order feel important here. You pass a narrow crossing where boards have been laid down to help pedestrians avoid the worst of the muck. They wobble slightly under your weight. Someone ahead of you slips, catching themselves just in time. No one laughs. Everyone has been there. The street grows louder as the morning advances. More carts, more voices calling prices and destinations. The ground grows more churned, more unpredictable. Yet you move with a growing confidence, your body adjusting automatically. Ankles stiffen, balance improves, attention sharpens. By the time you reach the end of the block, you realise something quietly unsettling. The filth no longer disgusts you. It simply is. It has become another feature of the city, like fog or bells or smoke. London teaches adaptation quickly, and the streets, endlessly layered and never fully clean, are among its first lessons. The sky lightens almost imperceptibly as you move on, though the sun itself remains hidden, working somewhere above the haze. This is the hour when work truly begins. Not with a signal or announcement, but with bodies aligning themselves toward obligation. Doors open wider now. Boots hit stone with more purpose. You feel the street's rhythm change under your feet. You pass a group of men gathered outside a warehouse. Shoulders hunched, hands shoved into pockets against the cold. No one speaks much. Words are saved for later, when breath comes easier. A foreman appears at the doorway, glances across the group, and nods once. That is enough. They file inside without ceremony. Another day claimed. For many Londoners, labour starts well before daylight and stretches far beyond it. Records from the period make clear that 10 to 12-hour workdays were common across trades, from dock work to domestic service. Rest is not a right here. It is something squeezed into the margins, taken when exhaustion forces it. You continue walking, passing smaller shops where shutters are lifted by hand. A butcher sharpens his knife on a stone, the sound soft but precise. A printer's apprentice carries stacks of paper, careful not to let the corners bend. Each task feels rehearsed, practiced into muscle memory. There is comfort in repetition, even when it grinds. A curious detail sometimes overlooked is how early some professions began. Bakers, for instance, often started work late at night, so bread could be ready by morning. While you sleep, they knead in fire ovens, bodies moving through darkness lit by flame. Their day ends when yours begins, a quiet trade of fatigue. You pause near a doorway as a young woman steps out, adjusting her cap. She carries a small basket, likely containing her midday meal. Her eyes are focused forward, expression neutral. She is a domestic servant, you can tell by the way. She moves quickly, but carefully, already mentally inside someone else's household. Her day will be long measured, not by hours, but by tasks completed and mistakes avoided. Debate continues among social historians about whether Victorians viewed work as a moral duty or simply an unavoidable necessity. Some argue that religious and cultural values framed labour as character building. Others suggest that survival left little room for philosophy. When rent is due, meaning becomes secondary. The street narrows again as you approach a cluster of workshops. Windows glow faintly from inside. Heat leaks out through cracks carrying the smell of oil and metal. You hear hammer strikes steady and unyielding. Each blow echoes slightly, as if the building itself is keeping time. You step aside to let a group of boys rush past, laughing, shouting. They cannot be more than 12 yet, each carries tools or parcels. Childhood here blends seamlessly into responsibility. There is no sharp line between play and work, only moments stolen between errands. Their laughter fades quickly as they disappear around a corner. Inside one workshop, you glimpse men bent over benches, faces already streaked with sweat despite the cold outside. Machines whir and clatter, demanding attention. Fingers move quickly. Mistakes cost money, sometimes skin. You do not linger. Looking too long feels intrusive, as if witnessing something private. Another accepted truth of the era is that employment often depended on visibility and reputation rather than formal contracts. Being seen each morning mattered. Absence invited replacement. The city was full of people willing to take your place, and everyone knew it. You notice how people walk with a sense of direction now. Earlier movement felt tentative, exploratory. Now it is purposeful. Paths converge toward factories, docks, markets, homes of the wealthy. London funnels its residents toward their roles with remarkable efficiency. As you pass a small square, you hear a bell ring sharply. Not a church bell this time, but a factory signal. It cuts through the fog, slicing the air. A few latecomers quicken their pace, heads lowered. The sound lingers longer than it should, bouncing off stone and brick before finally dissolving. There is a belief, less discussed but widely held at the time, that idleness invited illness and moral decay. To be busy was to be safe, at least in theory. You feel the weight of that belief pressing people forward, even when bodies resist. Your own pace settles into something steady. You're not running, but you're no longer wandering either. The city has absorbed you into its current. You feel both smaller and strangely necessary, another piece moving to keep the whole from stalling. As the morning deepens, the fog thins slightly, revealing more faces, more motion. The day has claimed you now. Whatever rest the night offered is already distant. Ahead lies heat, noise, repetition. Behind you, the quiet of early dawn slips away. You take one more breath of the cool air before it gives way to enclosed spaces and human density. Work waits patient and relentless, and like everyone else around you, you step forward to meet it. You step inside, and the world tightens around you. The door closes behind with a dull thud, cutting off the street sounds almost completely. In their place comes a new environment, hotter, louder, and heavier. The air presses against your skin. It smells of oil, damp cloth, and warm metal. Even standing still, you feel as if you're already working. Light enters through high windows coated with grime. It falls in pale shafts, catching dust that floats endlessly, stirred by motion and heat. The room is long crowded with bodies and machines, arranged in tight rows. There is little wasted space here. Everything exists to produce something else. The noise is constant, not sharp but layered. Wheels turning, belts slapping, iron parts clicking into place. Voices raised not in conversation, but in warning or instruction. After a few minutes, the sound blends into something almost solid, a pressure rather than a collection of individual noises. You feel it vibrate in your chest. It is well documented that factories transformed Victorian London faster than almost any other force. Mechanized production increased output dramatically, but it also concentrated workers into enclosed spaces where heat, dust, and repetition became daily companions. You feel that reality immediately before anyone explains it to you. You move to your place guided more by habit than thought. Hands know where to go. Muscles remember their role. There is a rhythm to this work that becomes familiar over time. Pull, turn, watch, adjust, repeat. The machine does not slow for you. You learn to match it, or you are replaced. A small but striking detail emerges if you watch closely. Many workers develop subtle gestures, tiny movements meant to protect themselves. A tilt of the head to avoid flying fibers. A pause timed perfectly between rotations. These habits are learned quietly, passed along by observation rather than instruction. Sweat forms quickly, even in winter. The heat builds from bodies and machines working together. Windows are rarely opened fully, partly to maintain temperature, partly because outside air brings soot and moisture. You wipe your brow with your sleeve and keep going. Stopping draws attention. There has long been discussion among historians about whether factory labour shortened lives primarily through accidents or through slower cumulative damage. Some point to dramatic injuries recorded in hospital logs. Others emphasise respiratory illness, hearing loss and exhaustion that wore bodies down over decades. Standing here breathing this air, the distinction feels academic. You glance down the line and notice a boy not much older than the ones you passed earlier. He works with intense focused jaw, set eyes locked on the machine. His hands are small but quick. Children are valued here for that very reason. They fit where adults cannot. They are cheaper, they complain less or learn quickly not to. It is an uncomfortable truth that child labour was not only common, but openly integrated into industrial life. Laws existed, but enforcement lagged. Families often depended on those small wages to survive. The factory floor reflects that reality without commentary. The floor beneath your feet is slick in places, worn smooth in others. You learn where not to step. You learn where to stand to avoid stray sparks or falling parts. The space teaches you constantly, usually without words. During a brief lull, someone nearby hums softly. The sound is almost lost in the machinery, but it carries a strange comfort. Music finds its way into the harshest spaces. Sometimes it is whistling, sometimes tapping. Anything to remind the body it is still human. There is an old anecdote passed along in worker memoirs about people who could no longer sleep without the sound of machines after leaving factory work. Silence felt wrong to them. Their bodies had learned to rest only inside noise. The idea seems odd, until you imagine carrying this rhythm with you every day. Time stretches differently here. Minutes blur. Hours feel both endless and abruptly gone. There are no clocks in easy view. Breaks come when they come. Hunger rises and settles again, without ceremony. You keep working. A supervisor walks past, eyes scanning, posture rigid. He says little. Authority here is quiet, efficient. Being noticed rarely brings anything good. You focus harder, keeping your movements precise. Scholars still examine how factory discipline reshaped ideas of time itself. Bells and shifts replace natural rhythms of daylight and rest. People learn to live by schedules imposed from above rather than by their own bodies. Standing here, you feel that lesson pressing in. When a bell finally rings, sharp and sudden, it startles you despite expecting it. The machine slows, then stops. The silence that follows is startling, almost painful. Your ears ring. Your hands twitch, unsure what to do without instruction. You step back, stretching fingers, rolling shoulders. Around you, others do the same. Faces look flushed, tired, resigned. No one speaks much. Energy is conserved even during rest. As the noise fades from your bones, you realize how deeply it has settled. The factory has marked you for the day. When you leave, the sound will follow, echoing faintly inside your head as you step back into the streets of London. When you step back into the street after the heat and noise, the air feels cooler, but no cleaner. Your ears still ring faintly, as if the machines have followed you outside and settled somewhere behind your eyes. Hunger arrives quietly. At first, a dull awareness, rather than a demand. By this hour, it has become impossible to ignore. You drift toward the market without consciously deciding to. Most people do. Food pulls you the way warmth does instinctively. The market announces itself long before you reach it. Voices rise and overlap. Crates scrape against a stone. Somewhere metal rings as a scale is set down a little too hard. Stalls cluster tightly together, spilling into the street. Canvas awnings sag with moisture. Baskets overflow with vegetables that look sturdy enough, though closer inspection tells another story. Cabbages with outer leaves already turning soft. Apples polished to a shine that feels suspicious. Fish laid out on beds of melting ice eyes, dull but not yet opaque. It is well established that Victorian London relied heavily on open markets for daily food supply, especially among the working population. Refrigeration does not exist in any meaningful way. Freshness is measured in hours, not days. What you buy now must be eaten soon or not at all. You move slowly, taking everything in. Smell guides your choices as much as sight. Bread is safe, mostly. Loaves stack high at a baker's stall, crusts dark and reassuring. You watch a woman press one gently, with her thumb testing its give. Satisfied, she hands over a few coins and tucks it into her basket like something precious. Meat stalls demand more caution. Cuts hang from hooks, some darker than others. A butcher wipes his hands on his apron and calls out prices with confidence. He knows which customers will ask questions and which will not. You notice how quickly transactions happen. Lingering invites scrutiny. There is a lesser-known habit from this period that often surprises modern audiences. Many households relied on visual tricks to judge food safety. Meat rubbed with salt to brighten its colour. Milk stirred to check consistency. Cheese sniffed aggressively, in public without embarrassment. Trust was sensory and immediate. You stop near a milk cellar watching liquid slosh into waiting containers. The milk looks thin. You wonder what has been added to stretch it further. Chalk, water, even flour have all been used at various times. Everyone knows this. Everyone buys anyway. Contemporary investigations from the era reveal just how common food adulteration was. Bread whitened with alum. Tea leaves reused and dyed, coffee bulked out with roasted grains. These practices were not always seen as criminal. Often they were considered clever business, a way to survive fierce competition. You feel the calculation running quietly through your mind. Hunger weighed against risk. Price weighed against quantity. It is not paranoia, it is habit. You have learned to choose the least dangerous option, not the perfect one. Nearby, a child weaves through the crowd, carrying a tray of pies, steam escaping through cracks in the crust. The smell is irresistible. You hesitate. Street food is affordable and filling, but it is also mysterious. What meat is inside? How long it has been sitting? Whether it was cooked thoroughly? The answers are unknowable. Some modern scholars remain divided over how often food contamination led directly to illness, versus how frequently it was simply tolerated by bodies hardened through exposure. Stomachs adapt, or they fail. Survival selects quietly. You buy bread. It is warm, still faintly scented with yeast. The vendor smiles a quick, practiced expression. Coins exchange hands. The loaf feels solid and comforting in your grip. You tear off a small piece immediately, ignoring crumbs that fall to the ground. Food tastes better when it is earned. As you eat, you watch the market pulse around you. Arguments flare and fade. A woman accuses a seller of cheating her on weight. He protests loudly, scales swinging. A small crowd gathers, then disperses when nothing comes of it. This theatre is part of the market too. There is an odd comfort in the noise. It reminds you that life continues beyond the factory walls, that pleasure still exists in small forms. A warm bite of bread, a laugh overheard, the brief satisfaction of hunger easing. You notice how differently people shop based on status. Better-dressed customers stand straighter, ask questions, expect answers. Others keep their heads down, hands moving quickly. No one wants to draw attention to uncertainty. Pride costs money here. As you finish eating crumbs sticking to your fingers, you wipe your hands on your coat. Cleanliness is approximate. You tuck the remaining bread away for later, already planning how to stretch it. Nothing eaten here is wasted thoughtlessly. The market begins to thin as midday approaches. Sellers call louder, trying to move goods before spoilage claims them. Prices shift subtly. Bargains appear for those who know when to wait. You step away, a stomach calmer now, and feel the city pulling you onward again. Food has done its job. It has not delighted you, but it has sustained you. In Victorian London, that is often enough. With the market sounds fading behind you, your attention turns back to your own body. The bread sits warm in your stomach, but the chill returns quickly. Clothing here is not an afterthought, it is armour. Every layer you wear is a small decision shaped by weather, money, and how you wish to be seen or not seen by the city. You tug your coat closer as a breeze slips between buildings. Wool resists it better than cotton, though it never fully keeps the cold out. The fabric is thick, heavy on your shoulders, already bearing the faint shine of long use. It smells of damp and smoke, no matter how often it is aired. This is normal. Everything here smells faintly of something else. As you walk, you become aware of how much information clothing communicates. Before anyone speaks, their coat does the talking. A well-cut jacket signals steady income. A frayed cuff suggests long hours and little pay. Boots tell stories too. Polished leather means indoor work. Scuffed toes and cracked soles belong to those who walk all day. Surviving wardrobes in museums show that Victorians owned far fewer garments than most people today. Many individuals relied on just a handful of outfits, repaired repeatedly until the original fabric was almost lost beneath patches. Clothing was expensive, and replacement was rare. What you wore had to last. You notice a woman ahead of you, adjusting her shawl, folding it carefully to cover thin spots. Shawls are versatile. They serve as warmth, modesty, and sometimes bedding. She pins it in place with a small brooch, dull but sturdy. Jewellery here is rarely decorative alone. It has a purpose. There is an odd custom recorded in letters and household guides from the period. Some people slept wearing their day clothes during the coldest months to save on heating. Removing layers felt wasteful when warmth was hard won. Comfort was negotiated, not assumed. You glance down at your own sleeves, noticing where the fabric has thinned at the elbows. These spots have been mended before. You can feel the stitching with your fingertips slightly raised. Repairs are visible everywhere. They are not hidden. Mending is a skill, and signs of it are accepted, even respected. As you pass a shop window, you catch a reflection that startles you briefly. The glass is uneven, warping your shape. Your shoulders look broader. Your face appears longer, older. You study yourself for a moment. Clothing changes posture. It shapes how you carry yourself. Heavy garments encourage stillness. Movement is deliberate. It is worth noting that dress codes in Victorian London were rigid, especially across class lines. Certain fabrics, colours, and cuts were associated with a respectability. Deviating from them could invite the suspicion or judgment. Clothes were not just protection from the cold. They were social signals that helped maintain order. A man brushes past you wearing a cleaner coat than yours, though not by much. His hat sits at a confident angle. He smells faintly of soap. You feel the difference immediately, not as envy but awareness. He moves through the crowd with slightly more ease. People make room for him without realising they are doing so. You tighten your scarf as the wind shifts. Scarves here are practical, often knitted at home. Patterns repeat because they are learned once and used forever. Bright colours are rare but not absent. Occasionally a flash of red or blue appears, a small rebellion against the grey. Some historians question how strictly people adhered to class-based dress rules outside formal settings. Evidence suggests that, while expectations existed, everyday necessity often blurred boundaries. Warmth mattered more than propriety when temperatures dropped. Survival softened social lines, even if only briefly. You watch a group of factory workers passing together their clothes, similar in cut and wear. They move as a unit, shoulders nearly touching, sharing heat unconsciously. Wool holds warmth well, especially when bodies are close. This closeness is practical, not intimate. Nearby, A well-dressed woman steps carefully, skirts lifted just enough to avoid the worst of the mud. Her gloves are light-coloured and already marked. She glances down in irritation, then continues. No fabric escapes the city untouched. You feel the weight of your own clothing again as you walk. It restricts some movements, but it also grounds you. There is a sense of being held together by these layers of carrying your small portion of the city on your back. Every crease, every stain marks a moment lived. As the street narrows, shadows deepen and the cold sharpens. You pull everything tighter, coat, scarf, hat. Each layer does its part. Together, they allow you to keep moving. Clothing here does not flatter. It endures. It signals where you belong and how hard you work. And as you blend back into the flow of people, wrapped in wool and quiet determination, you feel how deeply these garments are woven into daily survival. Without them, the city would be unbearable. With them, it becomes merely difficult, and that is enough to carry you forward. As you move farther along the street, your eyes are drawn downward. Children are everywhere, and once you begin to notice them, you cannot stop. They dart between adults, weave around carts perched on doorsteps, and hurry along with baskets nearly as large as their torsos. Their presence is not remarkable here. It is expected. A boy rushes past you carrying a bundle of cloth tied with twine. He nearly collides with a man twice his size, mutters a quick apology, and keeps going without slowing. His movements are efficient, learned through repetition rather than instruction. Childhood in this city is short compressed into the gaps between tasks. Surviving census records and factory logs make clear that large numbers of Victorian children worked regularly, often beginning as young as 7 or 8. Some assisted family businesses, others were sent out to earn wages independently. School existed, but attendance was irregular, shaped more by household needs than educational ideals. You pass a doorway where 2 girls kneel on the stone floor scrubbing fabric in a shallow tub. Their hands are red and raw. They glance up briefly as you pass, then return to their work. Water splashes, soap bubbles form and collapse. This is laundry day, and it waits for no one. There is a detail recorded in diaries and reform pamphlets that feels almost unbelievable now. Many children measured their age not in years but in jobs. How long since chimney sweeping? How many seasons selling matches? Life was organised around labour milestones rather than birthdays. You slow near a crossing where a group of children gathers, waiting for a break in traffic. One holds a stack of newspapers, tucked under his arm. Another clutches a basket of flowers petals, already browning at the edges. They talk quietly among themselves, trading jokes, nudging one another with familiarity. Work has not erased play entirely. It has simply reshaped it. The street opens slightly, and you notice a line of small figures crouched near a wall, heads bent close together. They are picking something from the cracks between stones. Coal fragments, anything that can be burned later. Nothing here is too small to matter. Observers from the time often remarked on how quickly children adapted to adult responsibilities. Some praised their resilience, others condemned the system that demanded it. The truth likely sits somewhere in between, uncomfortable and unresolved. A young girl brushes past you carrying a tray balanced on her head with surprising grace. She does not look at you. Her focus is fixed ahead. You wonder how long she's been doing this, how many streets she has memorized, how often she's been told not to spill. There remains disagreement among historians about how children themselves experienced this world. Some accounts suggest pride in contributing to family survival. Others describe fear fatigue and a longing for rest. Memory especially, childhood memory, is shaped by what comes after. You pause near a schoolhouse, its door-closed windows fogged from inside. A bell rings faintly. A few children enter reluctantly, others eagerly. Many do not enter at all. Education here competes with hunger, rent, and immediate necessity. Learning is valuable, but so are coins. As you continue, you notice how adults interact with these children. Instructions are brief, expectations are high, Sympathy is rare not because it is absent, but because it cannot change much. Kindness shows itself in small ways. A loaf broken in half, a task shortened, a word of warning shouted just in time. The city does not soften for youth. Streets remain dangerous. Work remains demanding. Yet children learn to read it all quickly. They develop sharp awareness, quick reflexes, and a sense of responsibility that sits uneasily on small shoulders. You pass a boy sitting on a stoop head, bent over a scrap of paper pencil, moving carefully. He looks up as you approach, startled, then relaxes when you pass without comment. Perhaps he is practicing letters, perhaps numbers, perhaps something else entirely. Moments like this slip easily between duties. As the crowd thickens again, children disappear into it, absorbed back into the flow. They are messengers, helpers, earners, learners, all at once. Their labour keeps households functioning, businesses running, streets alive. You walk on aware now that the city's energy depends not only on adult endurance, but on these small tireless figures moving constantly at knee height. Victorian London runs on many things: coal, money, machines, but also on children working quietly, persistently, shaping their lives around necessity long before anyone calls them grown. The day has reached a kind of shallow peak. The light is brighter now, though still filtered through smoke and cloud, and the streets feel fuller, tighter, louder. Midday in London does not pause, it compresses. You sense it in the way bodies cluster, and paths narrow in how every open space seems briefly claimed. Your stomach stirs again, not with hunger this time, but awareness. This is the hour when lives brush closest together. You step aside near a corner as a carriage glides past its wheels, cleaner, quieter than the carts you're used to. The horse is well kept. Its coat catches what little light there is. The driver sits high, posture straight, eyes forward. Just a few steps away, a man crouches against a wall, eating something wrapped in paper. His coat is thin. His boots are split at the seams. He eats quickly, glancing up between bites, as if expecting interruption. The distance between these two lives is measured in feet, not miles. Contemporary observers often remarked on how extreme contrasts existed side by side in Victorian London. Wealth did not gather neatly in one district, nor poverty remain confined to another. Streets overlapped, routes crossed. The city forced encounters even when people pretended not to see one another. You walk on passing shop windows that display objects meant more to be admired than purchased. Fine gloves, porcelain figurines, fabrics folded just so. You catch your reflection again, distorted and doubled by uneven glass, standing among things never meant for you. The effect is subtle but unmistakable. You belong to the street, not the window. Near a doorway, a woman waits with her back pressed to the stone, holding a bundle wrapped in cloth. She watches the flow of people carefully. When someone well-dressed approaches, she straightens slightly, hope flickering across her face. Sometimes a coin appears, often it does not. She lowers her eyes either way. There is a small detail, noted in letters and newspapers, from the time that feels almost cruel in its simplicity. Many charitable acts happened at midday, not because need was greatest then, but because benefactors were visible. Generosity often followed convenience. You pass into a wider thoroughfare where offices and shops stand taller, cleaner. Clerks spill out briefly, hats tilted back, voices lighter. They eat standing up or perched on steps, talking about prices, plans, politics. Their laughter carries differently. It assumes tomorrow. At the same time, you notice delivery boys zigzagging between them, sweat-darkening collars, faces flushed. One nearly collides with a gentleman who clicks his tongue in annoyance. The boy murmurs an apology and vanishes. The moment is small, but it lingers. Accounts from the era suggest that people became remarkably skilled at reading class, through posture alone. How someone stood, how quickly they moved, where their eyes rested. Clothing mattered, but so did confidence. You feel yourself adjusting unconsciously, shoulders, angled gaze, lowered just enough to avoid challenge. You pause near a bridge leaning against the railing. Below, the river moves slowly burdened. Boats slide past carrying goods from elsewhere to here. The water reflects the city in broken fragments. It smells faintly metallic, mixed with rot. You breathe through your mouth instead. There is an odd lunchtime ritual described in some factory districts. Workers would gather briefly to sit in patches of sunlight, even if it meant sitting on the ground. Light was treated almost like nourishment, something to be absorbed quickly before clouds reclaimed it. As you step away from the river, you notice a group of women walking together, arms linked. Their dresses are plain but clean. They talk quietly, heads close. Perhaps they work nearby. Perhaps they are running errands. Together, they move with more confidence than they would alone. Disagreement remains among historians about how aware people were of these daily contrasts. Some argue that constant exposure dulled sensitivity. Others believed the proximity sharpened resentment and aspiration alike. Standing here watching wealth and want pass within arm's reach, it feels impossible not to notice. A street musician has taken position near a busy crossing. His instrument is worn, the case scuffed. He plays steadily, not dramatically, letting the sound weave into the general noise. A few coins land near his feet. He nods once without breaking rhythm. Music here is background, not spectacle. You feel the pace begin to shift again. Lunch breaks end. Clerks straighten jackets, workers wipe hands on trousers, and return inside. The street exhales, then tightens once more as afternoon asserts itself. You step into a narrow lane where shadows linger longer. Here the contrast is sharper. A man sleeps against a wall, hat pulled low. Nearby, a tailor's apprentice hurries past carrying fabric finer than anything the sleeper will touch. No one stops, no one comments. The city does not assign judges, it assigns movement. Records from the time show rising concern about visible inequality, especially among reformers and journalists. Articles describe streets where wealth and deprivation coexist uncomfortably, fueling calls for change. But for most people, observation does not equal action. You see? You move on. You adjust your coat again, feeling its weight settle. The day presses forward, indifferent to reflection. Midday has shown you its sharp edges, its brief overlaps, its quiet tensions. The city has revealed itself not through speeches or statistics, but through proximity. As you rejoin the flow, the moment slips behind you. London keeps moving. And so do you, carrying the image of that carriage wheel passing inches from worn boots of laughter echoing near hunger, of a city that refuses to separate its extremes. It simply layers them hour after hour until they become part of the same relentless rhythm. As afternoon settles in a subtle heaviness, drifts through the streets. It is not visible, but you feel it in the way people move a little more slowly, in how voices lower, in the pauses that stretch just a fraction longer than before. This is the hour when the body begins to complain, and when illness, if it is waiting, often chooses to make itself known. You pass a doorway where a woman sits on a low stool, her head resting against the frame. Her eyes are closed. A cloth is pressed to her forehead. Someone inside murmurs to her, softly asking if she can stand. She shakes her head once. No drama follows. Sickness here is treated with quiet practicality. Attention is given but briefly. Life continues around it. Medical care in Victorian London exists, but it is uneven and often distant. Hospitals are real, doctors are trained, and treatments are attempted. Yet for many people, professional help remains expensive or inaccessible. Most care happens at home, guided by tradition, rumour, and whatever advice can be afforded. You continue walking, noticing how often certain smells recur. Vinegar, spirits, burnt herbs. These are not random, they are remedies. You pass a small shop where bottles line the shelves, each filled with liquid of a different shade. The labels promise relief, tonic, elixir, restorative. The words themselves carry hope. An overlooked habit from the time appears in household manuals and personal letters. Many families kept a small collection of remedies, prepared in advance just in case. A poultice ready to be warmed, a bottle of laudanum carefully rationed. Illness was expected, not exceptional. You stop near a water pump again, watching a man splash his face repeatedly. His skin looks pale beneath the grime. He coughs deep and rattling, then straightens as if embarrassed. Coughs are common here. They do not always prompt concern. Smoke, dust, damp air all take their toll. Physicians of the period recorded frequent cases of respiratory trouble, especially among urban populations. The connection between environment and health was becoming harder to ignore, even if explanations remained incomplete. You breathe shallowly, without meaning to, as if that might help. Inside a narrow building, you glimpse a small room where a child lies on a bed surrounded by adults. Someone fans the air, someone else murmurs instructions. The door remains open, letting in light and sound. Illness is not hidden away. It is shared, witnessed, managed together. There is a detail mentioned in nursing guides from the era that feels almost tender. Caregivers were encouraged to speak softly and steadily, believing calm voices could soothe fevered minds. Even without modern understanding, people sensed the power of tone. You pass a man selling pamphlets near a corner. Some advertise cures, others warn of outbreaks. Words like fever consumption, cholera appear frequently. Fear travels quickly through print. You glance at one page, then move on. Knowing too much does not always bring comfort. Later researchers have never fully agreed on how effective early public health measures truly were before germ theory took hold. Some argue that improvements in sanitation mattered more than medicine. Others point to gradual changes in diet and housing. Walking these streets, the causes blur together. You feel a slight ache settle into your own joints, perhaps from standing too long, perhaps imagined. In a city like this, attention to the body becomes a constant background process. Is this hunger, fatigue, something worse? You catalogue sensations quietly and keep moving. A small apothecary shop catches your eye. Inside, a man in a stained apron measures powder carefully, his movements precise. Shelves behind him hold jars labelled with names that sound reassuring and ominous at once. Camphor, Epsom salts, tincture of something you cannot pronounce. You notice how customers speak to him, with trust, with caution, with hope. Advice here carries weight even when outcomes are uncertain. People listen closely. They want guidance even if it is incomplete. There is disagreement among modern experts about how much placebo effect played a role in Victorian treatments. Relief sometimes came not from the substance itself, but from belief from being cared for, from the ritual of treatment. In a harsh environment, reassurance could be powerful medicine. You step away as someone else enters the shop, clutching a coin tightly. Outside, the air feels thick again. The fog has not fully lifted. It simply thins and thickens in cycles like breathing. As you walk, you notice small signs of recovery as well as illness. A woman laughing with a friend, cheeks flushed with something healthier than fever. A man stretching his arms after sitting too long, joints cracking softly. Bodies endure. They adapt. The city carries sickness openly, but it also carries resilience. For every cough, there is someone who recovers. For every bed-bound day, there is a return to work, to motion, to routine. Survival here depends on that return. You pass another doorway, another quiet scene of care, and continue on. Afternoon leans toward evening. Shadows lengthen. The ache in your legs deepens, but you're still moving. In Victorian London, health is fragile, contested, imperfect. Yet the city breathes on, and so do you, step by careful step. As the afternoon light begins to soften, you feel the city loosen its grip just slightly. Work continues, of course, but there is a subtle shift in the air. Shoulders drop a fraction. Voices lose some of their edge. This is the hour when people start thinking not about endurance, but about relief. You find yourself drawn toward the glow spilling from a low doorway. a public house. The sign above it sways gently, paint-chipped lettering faded by years of smoke and weather. Even before you step inside, you recognize the smell. Warm ale, wet wool, wood soaked with decades of spills. You push the door open and are greeted by a wave of heat and sound. Not loud exactly, but dense. Conversation overlaps in low tones. A laugh breaks free, then settles back into the hum. The floor sticks slightly beneath your boots, each step peeling away with a soft sound. Public houses play a central role in Victorian social life, especially for working people. They are not simply places to drink. They function as meeting points, news exchanges, and brief shelters from the cold. For many, this is the only heated room they will enter outside of work. You lean against the bar elbows, resting on worn wood polished smooth by countless hands. The surface is warm, comforting. A man behind the counter fills mugs without asking many questions. He knows most faces. Newcomers are noted quietly, without fuss. You take a sip. The ale is dark, slightly bitter, and not particularly strong. It spreads warmth through your chest almost immediately. Drinking here is rarely about excess. It is about steadiness, about taking the edge off fatigue, rather than escaping it entirely. There is an unexpected detail noted in temperance writings from the time. Many people considered beer safer than water, especially in poorer districts. Fermentation was believed to protect against illness. In some cases, it probably did. The choice to drink here often felt sensible, not indulgent. Around you, small scenes unfold. Two men argue gently over a card game, neither truly invested in winning. A woman nurses a mug, slowly, eyes half closed, savouring the warmth. Someone near the fireplace dries socks, carefully rotating them to avoid scorching. No one comments, everyone understands. You notice how conversations circle familiar topics: work conditions, prices, rumours of change. Someone mentions a speech they heard words about reform and fairness. Others nod skeptical, but listening. Hope is discussed cautiously, as if speaking too loudly might scare it away. Some later commentators have questioned whether pubs truly offered community or simply delayed deeper problems. The answer seems to depend on where you stand. From inside this room, with cold kept at bay and voices closed, the sense of belonging feels real enough. A man begins to hum near the corner, joined quietly by another voice. The tune is simple, well known. No one performs, no one applauds. The sound settles into the space like a blanket softening edges. Music here is not for attention, it is for togetherness. You take another sip, slower this time. Your body responds with gratitude. Muscles ease, thoughts wander. The noise becomes a cushion rather than a strain. For a moment, the city outside feels distant, muted by walls and warmth. There is a small but telling custom mentioned in court records and social surveys. Some workers left a portion of their wages at the pub for safekeeping, trusting the landlord more than themselves to hold on to it. Temptation was managed through ritual and community rather than locks. You glance around again, noticing how few people drink alone. Even those sitting quietly are surrounded by others, connected through proximity, if not conversation. Solitude exists here, but it is shared. Time passes differently inside. There are no clocks in easy view. You measure minutes by the warmth of the mug, by the rise and fall of voices. Outside, the light continues to fade unnoticed. Eventually, you set the mug down, feeling its absence immediately. You could stay longer, many do, but the day is not finished yet. Responsibilities wait, even if they are briefly forgotten. As you step back out into the street, the cool air hits your face, sharp and sobering. The pub door closes behind you, sealing in warmth and sound. You carry a little of it with you, though in your chest, in your steadier step. The city feels less hostile now, still demanding, still crowded, but softened at the edges. These small escapes matter. They make endurance possible. You walk on, aware that the evening is approaching, bringing new rhythms, new dangers, new comforts. For now you've had your pause. And in Victorian London, a pause like that can mean the difference between collapse and continuation. When you leave the warmth behind, something else meets you in the street. Not cold exactly, but expectation. The evening brings with it a different kind of attention. People stand a little straighter. Movements become more deliberate. This is the hour when eyes begin to notice when behaviour feels observed, even if no one is watching directly. You pass a church doorway, where the interior glows softly, candles flickering against stone. Voices drift outward in a low murmur. Some enter quietly, heads bowed. Others pass without slowing. Faith here is not uniform. It is practiced loudly, by some privately, by others, and ignored entirely by many more. Religious life in Victorian London is deeply woven into daily routine, especially for those seeking respectability. Churches and numerous sermons frequent, and moral instruction constant. Attendance is noted, absence is noticed. For many, being seen entering a place of worship matters almost as much as belief itself. As you walk on, you sense the invisible lines people follow. Certain streets feel safer to linger on. Certain corners encourage quicker steps. Morality here has geography. It attaches itself to places as much as people. A wrong turn can stain reputation as easily as action. You notice a woman pause to adjust her gloves before crossing a busier road. She checks her reflection briefly in a shop window, smoothing hair, straightening posture. The gesture is small but practiced. Appearance is read as character. Carelessness suggests something deeper, something suspect. There is an interesting detail mentioned in advice manuals of the time. Respectable behaviour was often described less in terms of kindness and more in terms of restraint. Speak softly, walk steadily, avoid drawing attention. Goodness was measured by control rather than warmth. You pass a group of men standing outside a mission hall, voices raised as they debate something earnest. Words like improvement and duty surface as you move past. One gestures emphatically, face flushed. Another listens with arms folded skeptical. Moral reform is a popular topic, especially among those who feel it might save others without costing themselves too much. Further down the street, a woman stands alone, beneath a lamp dress, darker posture, looser. She watches passers-by with careful attention. No one speaks to her openly, but glances linger. The contrast is immediate. Judgment forms silently shaped by posture, location, timing. Accounts from the period make clear that women were especially vulnerable to moral labelling. A reputation could be built slowly and lost quickly, often based on little more than rumour or misinterpretation. Respectability was fragile, constantly maintained through visible choices. You feel yourself adjusting again. Pace steady. Gaze neutral. You are careful where you stop, how long you linger. The city teaches this awareness early. Being read correctly matters. A pamphlet pasted to a wall catches your eye. Bold lettering warns against vice, drink, gambling, improper company. The language is urgent, almost desperate. Someone has scrawled a comment beneath it, half erased. You cannot read it fully, but the defiance is clear. Some modern commentators have questioned whether this moral intensity reflected genuine concern or anxiety about social change. Industrial growth shifting roles and urban anonymity unsettled long-standing structures. Rules multiplied when certainty faded. You pass a family walking together, children, close adults guiding gently but firmly. Their presence feels deliberate, almost performative. This is how safety is signalled. Togetherness as shield. Nearby, a man emerges from a doorway, hat low, coat unbuttoned. He pauses, scanning the street before moving on. No one stops him, no one greets him. Privacy exists here, but it is conditional. You hear a bell ring again, this time softer, slower. Evening service perhaps, or a reminder of curfew in certain districts. Bells regulate behaviour as much as time. They tell people where they should be and when. There is a small but telling habit recorded in letters between friends. Many Victorians altered their routes home after dark to avoid being seen too often in the same places. Familiarity could breed suspicion. Variety offered protection. As gas lamps flicker fully to life, shadows sharpen. Faces look different under this light. Lines deepen. Expressions become harder to read. The city shifts mood without changing structure. The same street now feels narrower, more intimate, more exposed. You pass a window where a family gathers around a small table, heads bent together. Inside, voices are low and calm. Outside, the street continues its murmur. The boundary between moral order and chaos feels thin, defined mostly by walls and timing. Debate continues among historians about how sincerely these moral expectations were embraced versus strategically performed. Evidence suggests many people learn to present one version of themselves publicly while living another privately. Survival required flexibility. You reach a crossroads and hesitate, briefly choosing the better lit path. It is not fear exactly, it is calculation. You have learned when visibility protects and when it invites trouble. As you move on, you feel the weight of all these quiet rules, pressing gently but constantly. Where to stand, how to walk, when to speak. Victorian London does not only shape bodies through labour, it shapes behaviour through observation. The evening deepens, lamps glow steadily now, church doors close, voices shift toward homes, halls and hidden corners. Respectability tightens its grip, even as temptation grows. You continue forward, carrying the day's lessons in posture and pace. Morality here is not abstract. It is practiced step by step, glance by glance, until it becomes another instinct, another layer you wear as you move through the city, careful, alert, and very much awake, even as night begins to settle. The streets feel different now. Not emptier exactly, but more watchful. Night has settled in fully, and with it comes a quiet tightening of the city's posture. Lamps glow at regular intervals, their light pooling unevenly on stone. Between those pools, darkness gathers, patiently filling doorways and corners with possibility. You walk with a bit more awareness than before. Your ears track footsteps behind you. Your eyes skim ahead, noting who stands still and who moves with purpose. This is not panic, it is habit. In Victorian London, caution after dark is learned quickly. You pass a uniformed figure standing near a crossing. The helmet catches the light. The posture is rigid, deliberate. This is a policeman, a relatively new presence in the city's long history. Organised policing has only recently taken shape, replacing older systems of watchmen and night guards. Authority now wears a recognisable form, meant to reassure as much as to control. The man nods once as you pass, not friendly, not hostile, simply present. His visibility alone changes how people move around him. Conversations lower, steps straighten. The lamp beside him feels brighter than the others. You turn down a narrower street where the light thins out. Here the sounds shift. Voices echo differently. Footsteps feel louder. Somewhere metal clatters, then goes quiet again. You cannot tell if it was an accident or something else. You keep walking. Crime in Victorian London is not constant, but it is persistent. Pickpocketing, burglary, assault. These are risks people factor into their routes and routines. Police reports from the era suggest that most crime was opportunistic, rather than planned, shaped by darkness crowds and chance encounters. You notice how people walk closer to walls, keeping to the edges. Doors are checked twice before closing. Windows glow briefly, then go dark as lamps are extinguished inside. Households retreat inward, sealing themselves off for the night. There is a curious detail found in memoirs and newspaper accounts. Many Londoners carried small objects at night, not for defence but for reassurance. A key held between fingers, a walking stick, even a book tucked under the arm. These items offered a sense of readiness, whether or not they could truly help. As you approach a busy junction, a group of men laughs loudly, their voices carrying. You slow slightly, gauging the mood. They do not notice you, or they choose not to. Either way, you pass without incident, breath easing only after a few steps. Different observers have offered conflicting interpretations of how effective early policing really was. Some point to falling crime statistics. Others argue that many offences simply went unreported. What is clear is that the presence of authority altered behaviour even when it did not eliminate danger. You hear a shout farther down the street. It rises quickly, then cuts off. No one reacts immediately. Shouts happen here. Some mean trouble, some do not. The city does not jump at every sound. It waits for confirmation. Near a lamplit doorway, a woman speaks quietly with a constable. Her hands move as she explains something. He listens, nodding once or twice. You cannot hear the words, but the exchange feels routine. Order here is negotiated as much as enforced. You notice how differently men and women move through this space. Men linger longer. Women tend to walk with purpose routes planned in advance. Companionship offers protection. Alone vulnerability sharpens. There is a long-standing question among researchers about whether fear of crime was greater than actual risk. Sensational stories sold papers, after all. Yet personal letters often describe genuine anxiety, especially after dark. Perception and reality blend together until the distinction matters less than the response. You reach another intersection, where two lamps stand closer together, their overlapping light creating a safer feeling pocket. A few people pause here, adjusting coats, waiting for others to join them before continuing. Shared movement feels wiser now. A man hurries past you, breath-quick hat pulled low. He glances back once, then disappears into shadow. You do not follow with your eyes. Curiosity is a luxury at night. As you continue, you feel the city's rhythm, slow. Carts become rarer, shops close fully. The noise softens, though it never disappears. Somewhere a dog barks, somewhere else glass breaks faintly, then nothing. You adjust your pace again, neither rushing nor drifting. You have learned the balance, confidence without challenge, awareness without fear. Victorian London, at night, is not lawless, but it is unpredictable. Order exists, but it shares space with uncertainty. The lamps promise safety, but only within their glow. Beyond that, the city asks you to rely on judgment. You walk on choosing light when you can, shadow when you must. Each step feels deliberate, now measured against sound and sight. The day's labour has ended, but vigilance has not. As you near your destination, you glance back once instinctively. The street looks ordinary, calm even. That is what makes it dangerous and survivable at the same time. You move forward again, carrying the quiet lessons of the night. Watch, listen, keep moving. In this city, safety is not guaranteed. It is practiced, learned, step by step, under the steady glow of gaslight and the watchful eyes that stand beneath it. As you turn toward home again, the noise of the street softens, but work does not disappear. It simply changes shape. Behind doors and windows, labour continues quietly, unseen by most of the city. This is the work that rarely earns wages or praise, yet without it, everything would stall. You pass a row of houses where lamplight glows warmly through thin curtains. Inside one, you glimpse a woman bent over a table, hands moving steadily as she mends a shirt. Her shoulders rise and fall with each stitch. Nearby, a pot simmers gently, releasing a faint smell of boiled vegetables. No one watches her. No one applauds. Still the work continues. Household tasks in Victorian London fall heavily on women, regardless of class. Cooking, cleaning, washing, mending, tending children, caring for the sick. These duties stretch from before dawn until well into the night. Manuals of the time describe them as natural responsibilities, rarely questioning the toll they take. You continue walking, noticing how many windows reveal similar scenes. A woman scrubbing a floor on her knees, another rocking a cradle with one foot while stirring something with one hand. Movement here is efficient, practiced, often silent. Time is managed carefully, parcelled out between needs that never fully end. There is a small but revealing practice mentioned in personal diaries. Many women plan their days in fragments rather than hours. 10 minutes to boil water, 5 minutes to check on a child. A brief pause to rest hands before continuing. Life was measured in tasks completed, not time enjoyed. You stop near a doorway where a young girl stands holding a baby against her shoulder. The child's head rests beneath her chin, breathing softly. The girl sways gently, eyes half closed, exhaustion etched into her posture. She is not playing at adulthood. She's practicing it. It is clear from employment records and household accounts that much of women's labour was unpaid and unrecorded. Even when women worked outside the home, their domestic responsibilities rarely lessened. Work layered on top of work, invisible but constant. You move on aware now of how much the city relies on these unseen rhythms. Clean clothes appear each morning because someone washed them the night before. Meals are ready because someone planned and prepared. Sick bodies recover because someone stayed awake beside them. An overlooked habit appears in letters exchanged between sisters and friends. Many women described moments of quiet pride in their efficiency. A well-run household was a personal achievement, even if no one else noticed. Control over small things offered dignity where larger choices were limited. You pass a servant's entrance, separate from the main door of a larger house. A woman slips out, briefly shawl, pulled a tight empty bucket in hand. Her steps are quick. She glances up and down the street before moving on. Even rest, when it comes, is borrowed time. There remains disagreement among historians about how women viewed this labour. Some evidence suggests deep frustration and fatigue. Other sources hint at identity and purpose found within responsibility. Likely, both existed side by side, shifting with circumstance and temperament. You hear the sound of water being poured out somewhere above you, followed by the scrape of a basin set down, then quiet again. The night absorbs these sounds, easily smoothing them into background. As you near your own building, you notice your hands ache slightly, even though you have not worked inside all day. The ache is familiar. It belongs to repetition, to effort spread across hours. You imagine how much heavier that ache must feel for those whose work never leaves the home. Inside, a lamp is lit. Someone has taken the time to prepare the space. The floor is swept. A chair is set just so. These details do not announce themselves. They simply exist, making rest possible. You pause at the threshold, understanding something that often goes unspoken. The city's visible engines, factories, offices, markets, depend entirely on this quieter labour. Without it, nothing functions. As you step inside, the door closes gently behind you. Outside, London continues its restless movement. Inside, there is warmth, order, and the lingering trace of effort. The work done here will never be listed in ledgers or praised in speeches, but it is felt everywhere. You settle in, shoulders loosening slightly. The day has taken much from many people, especially those whose labour leaves no mark except comfort. Victorian London survives not only through industry and authority, but through hands that work in silence, shaping daily life from the shadows. Evening loosens its hold just enough to allow pleasure back in. Not the grand kind reserved for theatres and drawing rooms, but smaller diversions that fit into narrow hours and tighter budgets. You feel the shift as you walk, a softening in the way, voices rise and fall, a flicker of anticipation, replacing pure fatigue. A glow spills from a music hall ahead, brighter and louder than the pubs you passed earlier. Posters crowd the walls, outside layered over one another, promising laughter songs, novelty. Faces stare out from the paper, exaggerated, expressions frozen mid-joke. You pause without meaning to. This place hums with possibility. Music halls have become one of the most popular forms of entertainment in Victorian London. Cheap tickets and Varied acts make them accessible to a broad audience. Workers, clerks, servants all gather here, sitting shoulder to shoulder, differences momentarily blurred by shared attention. You step inside, and the air changes again. Tobacco smoke hangs thick, swirling under the lights. The crowd buzzes with conversation, punctuated by bursts of laughter. Seats are cramped. Knees touch. Elbows bump. No one minds. Proximity is part of the experience. On stage, a performer sings a familiar tune, voice strong and playful. The lyrics flirt with respectability, hinting at jokes that land differently depending on who hears them. The audience responds in waves. Some laugh openly. Others smile behind hands. Humour here relies on shared understanding, on knowing where the line is and stepping close without crossing. There is a small but revealing practice noted by social observers of the time. Many music hall songs spread faster than printed news. A catchy chorus could carry gossip, political opinion, or social criticism across neighbourhoods within days. Melody made memory easy. You find yourself smiling, muscles in your face moving in ways they have not all day. The sound wraps around you, warm and distracting. For a moment, the weight of work and rules lifts. This is not escape in the modern sense. It is pause carefully rationed. Between acts, people shout requests. Someone spills a drink. Another complains loudly, then laughs. The space feels alive, unruly in a way that contrasts sharply with the moral restraint you felt earlier. Here, noise is encouraged. Expression is rewarded. Writers and reformers of the period often disagreed sharply about places like this. Some saw them as vital outlets, harmless fun that relieved pressure. Others warned they encouraged idleness and bad behaviour. The truth, like most things, seems to have depended on who was watching and why. You notice how different groups use the space. Young couples sit close whispering. Groups of men cheer loudly, voices rough with drink and work. Women attend too, sometimes together, sometimes alone, navigating attention with practiced ease. The hall accommodates many versions of enjoyment. The performance shifts to a comedic routine. The jokes draw on everyday frustrations. Long hours, low pay, crowded housing. The audience laughs hardest at what they recognise. Humour here does not hide reality. It names it briefly, safely. You clap along with the crowd, the sound blending into a single rolling wave. Hands sting pleasantly. The rhythm grounds you. For these moments, you're part of something collective, not just another body moving through obligation. There is evidence in personal letters that people often remembered evenings like this more vividly than months of routine. The brightness stood out against grey days. Memory clung to colour and sound. As the final act ends, the crowd begins to shift energy, draining slowly. Coats are gathered. Conversations resume their everyday tone. The magic fades, but it does not vanish completely. It lingers, carried out into the night, on warmed faces and half-remembered tunes. You step back onto the street ears, still ringing lightly. The night feels different now, softer, less threatening. The lamps glow as before, but your posture has changed. Shoulders sit lower. Steps feel lighter. Not far away, a small fair has gathered in an open space. Lanterns sway. A cheap game offers a prize no one expects to win. Children linger nearby, eyes wide. Adults pretend not to care, then step closer anyway. Such amusements appear and disappear, quickly tolerated, as long as they do not draw too much attention. They offer another kind of pause, briefer, brighter, and often louder than intended. You do not stay long. The hour is late. Tomorrow will arrive regardless of how well you enjoy tonight. Still you carry the echo of laughter, with you humming softly beneath the city's usual sounds. As you turn toward home again, you realize how necessary these small pleasures are. They stitch the days together, offering contrast relief, something to anticipate beyond survival. Victorian London is often remembered for its hardships, its rules, its relentless pace. But it also hums with music, jokes, shared amusement, squeezed into narrow windows of time. Without these moments, endurance would crack. You walk on tunes still looping faintly in your mind, letting it soften the edges of the night. The city settles around you again, and for once it feels almost kind. The music fades behind you as the streets shift once more. Night deepens and gaslight takes full command of the city. Lamps hiss softly, their glow steady but imperfect, casting long shadows that stretch and bend across stone. Faces look unfamiliar, now reshaped by light from below. The same street you walked this morning feels altered, quieter, more intimate. You notice how carefully people move after dark. Footsteps slow, routes straighten. Most choose streets with regular lamps. Even if it adds distance, darkness is not empty here. It is occupied by uncertainty. You walk with your hands closer to your body coat, pulled in listening as much as looking. Gaslighting is one of the great transformations of the city. Once installed along major roads, it extended usable hours and reshaped evening life. Shops stayed open longer. Streets felt marginally safer. Yet the light was uneven, and beyond its reach, shadows gathered confidently. You pass beneath a lamp and feel the warmth briefly on your face. Insects flicker around the glass, tiny silhouettes dancing in the glow. The lamp smells faintly metallic, mixed with gas. A worker climbs a ladder nearby, adjusting a wick with practiced movements. Maintenance never stops. Light requires constant attention. There is an overlooked habit noted in some personal accounts. People often pause deliberately beneath lamps, not just for safety, but to see one another's faces clearly. A glance exchanged in light carried more meaning than one lost in shadow. Visibility became its own language. Farther along the street narrows again, and the lamps spread farther apart. Your eyes adjust slowly. Doorways appear as dark gaps. Windows reflect light back at odd angles, doubling it, distorting it. You hear footsteps behind you, then realize they match your own. Someone else is walking the same way, neither gaining nor falling back. Later analysis of crime reports suggests that darkness did not always increase danger, but it heightened awareness. People noticed more. They listened harder. Fear sharpened senses even when nothing happened. You feel that sharpening now, a quiet alertness humming just beneath thought. You reach a corner where a lamplighter's pole leans against the wall. The man himself is nowhere in sight, but his work remains. Each lamp stands like a small promise, limited but sincere. Between them, the city waits. A cat darts across your path, vanishing into an alley. Your heart jumps, then settles. You exhale quietly, almost amused. Nights teach you restraint. Overreaction wastes energy. You pass a row of houses where curtains are drawn tight. Behind them, private lives continue muffled and invisible. Laughter leaks out briefly, then disappears. Somewhere a radio does not exist yet, but a piano does. A few uncertain notes drift into the street, then stop. There is disagreement among modern researchers about how transformative gaslight truly was for ordinary people. Some argue it fundamentally reshaped social habits. Others believe it changed little beyond perception. Walking here, you feel both views hold truth. Light alters behavior, but not reality. Your steps echo slightly, now sound carrying farther in the cooler air. You become aware of your own presence in a way you were not earlier. Each movement announces itself. Each pause feels exposed. Near a crossing, two lamps stand close together, their light overlapping. A few people linger here, exchanging words before parting ways. The brightness creates a temporary island, a place to gather safely before separating into darker routes. You stop briefly beneath one lamp, letting its glow wash over you. The glass hums softly. The flame inside flickers, but holds. You check your surroundings, then move on again, comforted but not careless. As you approach your street, the lamps thin. Familiar landmarks emerge from shadow. You recognize the shape of a doorway before you see it clearly. Home announces itself quietly. Gaslight recedes behind you as you turn the final corner. The city does not sleep, but it does soften. Sounds grow fewer, movement slows. You feel the day's weight settling fully now. You unlock the door and step inside, closing out the street with a gentle click. The light outside remains standing watch. Inside, darkness feels different, safer, earned. The city breathes on, illuminated in fragments. You have learned to move between them, trusting light where it exists and judgment where it does not. Victorian London, at night, is a patchwork of glow and shadow, and tonight you have made your way through it. Inside, the door shuts out most of the city, though not all of it. Sound seeps through walls and floors the way cold once did. A cart rattles somewhere in the distance. Footsteps pass, then fade. London never fully goes quiet. It simply lowers its voice. You prepare for rest with movements learned through repetition. The lamp is turned down, not out. Complete darkness is uncomfortable here. Shadows feel safer when they are shaped by a small steady glow. You set your shoes aside, carefully aware that damp leather needs time to dry even if time is rarely generous. The room cools quickly once the door is closed. Heat leaks away through brick and glass. You pull a blanket closer, feeling its weight settle across your legs. It smells faintly of wool and smoke, familiar and grounding. Beds in this city are not built for luxury. They are built for necessity. Written accounts from the period describe sleep as fragmented for many urban residents. Long uninterrupted rest was uncommon. Noise, discomfort, and shared spaces shaped nights as much as days. You do not expect deep sleep immediately. You expect intervals. You lie back listening. Somewhere above you, someone coughs. Below, a chair scrapes softly across the floor. In the wall, something scratches. You know better than to investigate. Rats and mice are common companions here, more accepted than welcomed. You pull the blanket tighter and hope they stay within the walls. There is a small but telling habit mentioned in household guides. Many people shook their sheets before bed, not just to straighten them, but to discourage unwanted guests. The ritual offered comfort, even when it did not solve the problem entirely. You close your eyes briefly, then open them again, as a noise startles you. A shout from the street, a laugh following it. The city is still awake somewhere, even if you're trying not to be. Your breathing slows deliberately. In, out, slow enough to calm the body. Doctors of the era often recommended fresh air for better sleep, advising people to open windows slightly at night. In a place like London, this advice was complicated. Air carried soot and damp, but closing windows trapped heat and smell. You compromise, as most do, leaving it open just a crack. The sounds shift as the hour grows later. Fewer carts, more isolated footsteps, a dog barking then quiet. The rhythm becomes irregular, unpredictable. You learn to let it pass over you rather than react to each change. Some researchers have questioned how much chronic fatigue shaped Victorian life. Constant tiredness was rarely named as a condition, but letters and journals describe a weariness that never fully lifted. You feel it now settling into muscles and bones, heavy but familiar. Your thoughts wander without effort. Small moments from the day drift back. The warmth of the pub, the laughter in the music hall, the ache in your hands. Memory loosens as the body tires edges softening. The mattress shifts beneath you as you turn onto your side. Springs creak quietly. You find the position that offends the least. Comfort is relative. You adjust until stillness feels possible. There is an odd practice mentioned in some urban households. People placed objects near the bed for reassurance. A book, a personal item, a small religious token. These were less about belief and more about grounding, proof that something familiar was close by. You reach out and touch the edge of the table beside you, confirming its presence without opening your eyes. Breathing deepens gradually. The room fades into a blend of shadow and half-light. The city's noise becomes a distant murmur, no longer demanding attention. Your body learns again how to let go, even if only partially. Sleep arrives in layers, a shallow drift, a deeper pause, a brief waking, then drift again. This is how rest works here, negotiated rather than claimed. As your thoughts slow, the day releases its grip. London continues outside, vast and indifferent, but for now you are still. Wrapped in wool and dim light, sharing walls with strangers, you let the night take what it can, and leave the rest for morning. You wake briefly in the night, not fully alert, just aware. The room feels colder now. The lamp has burned lower, its glow barely lifting the darkness from the corners. For a moment you're unsure where you are. Then the walls remind you. The smells, the familiar creak of the building settling. London, even in sleep, never quite lets go. Your thoughts drift toward tomorrow without effort. Work will return. It always does. Yet tucked beneath the routine is something else, quieter but persistent. A sense that the city does not have to remain exactly as it is. That idea circulates softly, passed from person to person, like a shared breath. In coffee houses, meeting rooms, and crowded parlours, people talk about change, wages, housing, education. Not loudly, not always confidently, but often enough to matter. Newspapers carry stories of reformers and critics of speeches given and committees formed. Hope moves slowly here, but it does move. Evidence from the period shows a growing appetite for improvement, especially among those who lived the city's hardest edges daily. Campaigns for cleaner water, shorter workdays, safer streets began as conversations like these, fragile and easily dismissed, yet difficult to silence completely once spoken. You turn onto your other side, blanket pulled closer. The mattress sighs beneath you. Somewhere nearby, someone else shifts in their sleep, sharing the same thin wall, the same cold. Dreams mingle, invisibly shaped by hunger, ambition, fear and endurance. There is a small detail recorded in letters written late at night, never meant for public eyes. Many people described imagining different futures as they lay awake. A shop of one's own, a cleaner room, a child spared from labour. These visions were modest by modern standards, yet powerful enough to keep exhaustion from becoming despair. Outside, a cart passes slowly, wheels muffled. Perhaps a night delivery, perhaps something else. You do not investigate. The sound fades, leaving behind a deeper quiet than before. These pauses feel rare, almost sacred. Observers looking back have struggled to agree on how widespread such hope truly was. Some portray Victorian Londoners as resigned, focused solely on survival. Others point to diaries, petitions, and mutual aid societies as proof of collective imagination at work. Lying here half asleep, it feels possible that both are true. You think of the children you saw earlier carrying bundles and baskets, of the women bent over endless tasks, of men standing at factory doors before dawn. Each of them carries private calculations about how long they can continue like this and what might come next. The city's future is being shaped quietly, not only in Parliament or newspapers, but in these thoughts, these whispered conversations, these tired but persistent dreams. Change does not announce itself. It accumulates. Your breathing slows again, syncing with the building's faint creaks and sighs. The night deepens. The city feels very old in this moment, layered with generations of similar hopes and disappointments. You imagine London years from now, cleaner, perhaps louder, perhaps different in ways you cannot predict. You will not see all of it. No one ever does. But each day lived here adds something small to what comes next. Sleep pulls you gently downward again. Thoughts loosen, images blur. The idea of tomorrow softens into something less demanding, more distant. Wrapped in darkness and wool, you rest inside a city that is constantly becoming something else. Even now, even while you sleep, London is changing one quiet thought at a time. Morning is not here yet, but the city has not stopped breathing. Even in the deepest part of the night, London shifts and settles like a great animal, adjusting its weight. You lie still half awake, half drifting aware of this movement without needing to see it. Somewhere far off, a bell rings once, not a call to rise, just a signal carried through the dark. You hear it faintly, then not at all. The sound leaves behind a sense of continuity, of days stacked carefully, on top of one another, each almost identical, each quietly shaping the next. The room around you feels smaller now, more intimate. The walls hold warmth where bodies have leaned against them all day. The floor no longer bites with cold. You notice how familiar everything feels. The smell, the texture of the blanket, the pattern of distant noises. This is what belonging looks like here. Not comfort exactly, but recognition. Written observations from the period often describe how quickly people adapted to conditions that once seemed unbearable. What shocked newcomers became ordinary within weeks. Human endurance stretches quietly, finding balance where none seems possible. You have felt that stretch throughout the day, and now it eases. You think again of the streets, the mud pressed flat by countless feet, the lamps standing watch, the markets, the factories, the rooms stacked tightly, one atop another. All of it continues, whether you're watching or sleeping. The city does not wait. There is an overlooked habit mentioned in old correspondence. Some Londoners listen deliberately for familiar nighttime sounds before sleeping. A neighbour's cough, a regular patrol passing, a distant cart. These noises reassured them that life was proceeding as expected. Silence, not noise, caused unease. You listen now. A muffled laugh, a door closing somewhere below, then quiet. The pattern holds. Nothing feels out of place. You allow your body to relax further, trusting the rhythm you have learned. Later historians have never reached full agreement on whether Victorian London was more oppressive or more resilient than cities that followed. The evidence cuts both ways. Hardship is undeniable. So is adaptability. Lying here after walking its streets and sharing its hours, the answer feels less important than the experience itself. Your breathing deepens. The day's images blur together. Fog and gaslight, bread and warmth, laughter and exhaustion. They merge into a single impression, not sharp anymore, just present. This city has shown you what it asks of those who live inside it. Attention, endurance, adjustment. In return, it offers survival, community, and the faint but persistent sense of forward motion. You turn slightly, finding a position where the mattress offends you least. The blanket settles, muscles soften, thoughts slow, stretching out like shadows at the edge of a lamp's glow. London will wake again soon. Bells will ring. Doors will open. Feet will return to stone. But for now, you are allowed this pause. The city breathes. You breathe with it. And slowly, without effort, you let the night carry you the rest of the way down. Wind down. Everything grows softer now. The sharp edges of the day have worn smooth-rounded by repetition and rest. Your thoughts no longer hurry. They drift unstructured, unburdened by sequence or meaning. The city outside fades into a distant hum, no longer demanding attention. Sounds blend together until they are less noise and more texture, like rain heard from another room. Your body feels heavier, anchored gently to the bed, supported without effort. There is nothing left to solve tonight. No streets to navigate, no rules to remember. Just breath slow and even rising and falling in the dim. You imagine the lamps dimming one by one, the fog thinning, the buildings standing quietly waiting. London rests as much as it ever does. Stay here in this stillness. Let the images dissolve, let the night stretch. You are safe here, you are warm enough, you are allowed to sleep. Sweet dreams.